Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Insurrection, obstruction, indictments, civilly liable for sexual abuse. The one man responsible for all that could be sitting in a prison cell on election day and still be elected commander-in-chief for these United States. That man is beholden to Putin, weakened NATO the last time around, and is currently tying himself to wealthy Saudi oil money. He enriched himself when government stayed at his properties. He campaigned on wanting to use government to go after his political rivals and wants to expand executive power. If Donald Trump is reelected, our nation is lost. So let's roll up our sleeves, get to work, and tell the MAGA folks no more before it's too late.
And welcome back to Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right. This is your host, Dan Zimmerman, coming at you from New Orleans, Louisiana. Just give me a second and I'll find my camera thing to join the conversation. It's 914-803-4131. That is 914-803-4131. There we are. It got lost in the thing. Or you can join us in the chat rooms on YouTube or Twitch. We don't use the Blog Talk Radio chat rooms, but on YouTube, the link to the YouTube channel is just liberaldanradio.com, and Twitch is twitch.tv/liberaldanradio. You can support the show by liking the video, sharing the stream, subscribing to the channel, like, comment, and share other videos as well here on YouTube, as well as, you can Venmo me financially to support the show. Venmo, Liberal Dan on Venmo. Go to liberaldan.com, click the Buy Me a Cider button, or just go to buymeacoffee.com/liberaldanradio for one-time contribution as well. You can become a patron, patreon.com/liberaldan or patreon.liberaldan.com. Either way gets you there. You can, Amazon Prime, if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to the Twitch channel for free. Doesn't cost you anything. It helps me out. So you can use that once a month. You have to do it every month. You can also subscribe over there regularly. You can buy bits over there. You can become a Liberal Danimal here on YouTube, various membership levels starting at $2, and you can also super chat, super sticker, etc. All the different ways to support the show. Interaction is the most important thing. Obviously, I would love to have financial support and be able to do this for a living, but that's not in the cards at the moment. But as we'll grow, we'll get more monetization, funds from monetization. We'll get more funds from everything else. But just we need engagement on the channel just to get people, coming to the channel, coming to the chats, visiting the other videos that I produce and upload to the stream and upload to the channels or whatever. Just do as much as you can. I appreciate everybody for everything that they can and do. Make sure not to do too close together. So let's see, shouts out Alarasia, Mike, Jolie, one half of the mod squad. Aaron will not be with us tonight, I don't think. Probably not. Did I ever say hi to Jackie? I don't think so. Hey, Jackie, Jeff, Nick, good to see you, Nick. Alarasia, cleaning house and packing for a trip. Where you going? Coming to New Orleans to come party with Liberal Dan? Janelle, good to see you all. Thank you all for stopping by and joining the fun. It's been running around like crazy today. I had a meeting at my kid's school today, as a back to school. Parents get to meet the teachers, so that was, just had to go all across the river for that, and then come back. Had other things I had to do today. It's been a nuts day. It's been crazy. So, but we got back in time to be able to do the show, so that's the important thing, right? Bunch of stuff to talk about today. We are going to be talking about other things other than Trump's sinister plans, twirly the mustache. to try and steal the election. We'll talk about some of the ways that we already know. I'll have some of the chat guess, or maybe have the chat when we get to that point, try and say the ways that they believe that Trump is going to steal the election, and then we'll get into the way the sinister way that I believe he's gunning for. No, figuratively, I guess. Hopefully not literally at this time. About how he's going to try and take the election with a minority of the overall vote. So, anyway. But first things first, I do want to discuss Donald Trump simply can't follow the rules. He doesn't know how to follow. He doesn't care about following the rules. I mean, we already know that he successfully got the Supreme Court to rule in his favor that that the presidents have total and complete immunity for whatever it is that they do while they're president. And you might say, well, Dan, the Supreme Court ruling only said for official acts, and then certain other things are presumed to be official unless otherwise proven not to be. But even if they're not official acts, any conversations that take place between him and the members of the executive branch are considered to be, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking on the word because it's been a long day. I'll take some water real quick. Privileged is the word I was looking for. Conversations between the Trump and the other members of his executive branch have been deemed privileged, regardless of whether or not they are pertaining to official acts or not. So, how do you go after a president for unofficial acts if you cannot subpoena the people who are in his administration when he was trying to get them to do unofficial acts through official channels? That's why I say the Supreme Court basically gave him de facto total and complete immunity. The conservatives will try and argue it, but they're wrong because it's more than what they say. So, you're going to the Poconos. Haha, I get it. I poked my nose. So, but even when he's not president, he doesn't like to follow the rules either. AP News, I'm sure you've heard about this already. Trump campaign was warned to not take photos at Arlington before altercation, defense official says. Trump's campaign was warned about not taking photographs before an altercation at Arlington National Cemetery during a wreath-laying ceremony earlier this week to honor service members killed in the Afghanistan war withdrawal, a defense official told the Associated Press. The official spoke on a condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive matter that came a day after NPR reported, citing a source with knowledge of the incident, that 2 Trump campaign staff members verbally abused and pushed aside a cemetery official who tried to stop them from filming and photographing in Section 60, a burial site for military personnel killed while fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. The defense official told the AP that the Trump campaign was warned about not taking photographs in Section 60 before their arrival and altercation. Trump was at Arlington on Monday at the invitation of some of the families of the 13 service members who were killed in the Kabul airport bombing 3 years prior. Arlington National Cemetery is a resting place for over 400,000 service members, veterans, and their families. Cemetery officials said in a statement that an incident had occurred and a report had been filed, but it did not address the details of what had happened. Federal law prohibits political campaign or election-related activities within Army, national, military cemeteries to include photographers, content creators, or any other person attending for purposes or in direct support of a partisan political candidate's campaign. Arlington National Cemetery reinforced and widely shared this law and its prohibitions with all participants. We can confirm that there was an incident and a report was filed. Trump's spokesperson Stephen Chung said that the Republican presidential candidate's team was granted access to have a photographer. He contested the allegation that a campaign staffer pushed a cemetery official. The fact that a private photographer was permitted on the premises, and for whatever reason an unarmed individual clearly suffering from a mental health episode decided to physically block members of Trump's team during a very solemn ceremony. Yes, let's insult people's mental health whilst trying to, as an excuse to violate the rules, violate the law that says you can't do what you were trying to do. Chris LaCivita, a top Trump campaign advisor, noted that Trump was there at the invitation of the families of the service members who were killed at the airport. Well, of course he was there at the invitation, because he wouldn't go of his own volition. He wouldn't go just because he feels like he needs to support the troops, because Donald Trump is on record for calling the troops suckers and asking what was in it for them. So, again, it baffles me why anybody who would support the military would back this idiot. But for some reason, they've been hoodwinked into believing that Trump's going to support the military, even though he called, he mocked John McCain and did all the things we know he did. We all know that he did all the horrible things that he did pertaining to the military, and he's not going to stop. He's going to continue. Leopard doesn't change his spots. So, Trump campaign posted a message signed by relatives of the two service members killed in the bombing that the president and his team conducted themselves with nothing but the utmost respect and dignity. Well, he may have, but the people who were trying to do things that were against the law weren't. For a despicable individual to physically... Oh, wait, this wasn't Trump speaking. For a despicable individual to physically prevent Trump's team from accompanying him to a solemn event is a disgrace and does not deserve to represent the hallowed grounds of the Arlington National Cemetery. Whoever this individual is spreading these lies and dishonoring the men and women of our armed forces, blah, blah, blah. This is what we come to expect from Donald Trump and his team. Donald Trump is a person who wants to make everything all about Donald Trump. He's also somebody who has a history of demeaning and degrading military service members, those who have given the ultimate sacrifice. Utah Governor Spencer Cox also came under fire Wednesday for including a photo of him and Trump at the ceremony in a campaign email soliciting donations for his re-election bid. The Republican governor recently surprised voters when he pledged support to Trump after the July assassination attempt, despite saying days earlier on CNN that he hadn't voted for Trump in 2016 or in 2020 and would not cast a ballot for him again this year. I guess Donald Trump got to him, I suppose. Cox said an embrace of Trump, who has not endorsed him back, represents a puzzling departure from his carefully curated persona as a Mitt Romney-esque moderate. So yeah. So Donald Trump's a piece of crap, and we all know that Donald Trump's a piece of crap, and this is just another reason showing why Donald Trump is a piece of crap. So there you go. Let's see. Twitch is not up. Okay, well, I guess Twitch will be up in a second. There we go. There we go. Twitch is now up. Let's see. Nick Rich, Joe has the same immunity. Well, yeah, he does, but problem is Joe wouldn't abuse it. We need to make sure to elect people who won't abuse the immunity until we do something to fix that stupid ruling. Earlier, Shady Vance said Kamala can go to hell in a speech today. Deplorable, of course. Why wouldn't he? Hell is someplace without couches, according to J.D. Vance. Source unknown. Source, Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left, that's right. Hey, Chad, what's going on? Yes, exactly, Nick. Being invited does not allow you to break the freaking law. Chad, kind of like how union heads support Harris, but most union workers support Trump. Do most union workers support Trump? I don't know if that is a fact that is laid out, if that's factual or not. How most union workers poll in the 2024 election. Let's see how those polls are. February 27th, there was a poll. Union households favor Biden, but by a closer margin than you believe. So back in February, back before, you had the Democratic Party and their new candidate, Kamala Harris, getting their surge. According to this site, overall, union households, 50% to 41%. So there you go. So no, union households do not support Trump more than Biden, and I'm sure the support for Kamala Harris is even better because Kamala Harris has been trending upwards that way. Mike, he's done wonders for the VA system. Like what? Chad, you're a vet. All the vets you know support Trump. Well, that is anecdotal. That is not proof. Anecdotal evidence is not proof of overall support amongst unions or support amongst vets either. There are lots of vets who don't support Trump either. There are politicians who are veterans who served this country well and honorably who refuse to support Donald Trump because of Donald Trump and his statements about John McCain and him being captured. I prefer people that were not captured, okay? That's what he said. How do you, as a vet, justify that support? How? I mean, every single speech, Joe Biden would end, God bless the United States and God protect our troops. Biden would constantly ask God to protect the troops. Meanwhile, Trump denigrates them, insults them, and wonders what's in it for them. He questions their honor. He questions their motivations. Because Donald Trump can't understand the idea of putting your own life at risk for other people without any sort of reward for it, other than the fact that you're doing the right thing or you're doing something that's good for humanity. Right? Donald Trump doesn't understand that because he comes from wealth and privilege, and he can't understand the simple idea of doing something just because it's the right thing to do. I don't know has Donald Trump ever done the right thing. If he does, it was probably by accident. Yeah, Leslie, Donald Trump has demeaned his generals many times. Mike, it's not a law, it's a couth thing and respect. Well, I mean, it's both the law. It's against the law to do, if we're talking about what happened in the cemetery, it's against the law to do what he did, and it's also a matter of the fact that he's uncouth. Adlo him. How can anybody support Harris? How can anyone not support Harris? Because Harris wants to support the democratic ideals on which this nation was founded. Harris wants to, support body autonomy, LGBTQA rights. People in the military, wants to protect the people in the military from having a despot who wants to make everything all about him. When Donald Trump was first president, he wanted to have a parade for him, not to celebrate the military, not to celebrate, the country, he wanted a military parade in his honor because he looked at what happened to things like Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin and all the other despots across the world, and he was like, I want that too. I want to be just like them. Why would you want somebody who wants to be just like Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un? Doesn't make any sense. That's like, Donald Trump is an authoritarian. Why conservatives support an authoritarian when conservatism is supposed to be about limited government is beyond me. Aren't you all supposed to support limited government? Aren't you supposed to want small government? Now you're trying to elect a person who wants to take control of everything and have, all the power in the executive branch. He wants to be dictator on day one. Adlo him. She has done. That's not true. She has done things. When she was Attorney General of California, she cracked down on smuggling rings, but busting up, fighting cartels, using the fact that California is a huge economy. Let's see. I'm just saying from my personal experience, people here not only that I know, I also have a lot of liberal friends, but no one I know that is a vet or union is liberal. What unions are they a part of, I would ask you? 56, Nick Rich. Giving a maggot fax is pointless. They want orange taint. Yes, please, bend down and worship the orange taint while I bend down and worship Putin's taint. You like price control. Well, what did Donald Trump do? He sent prices out of control. When Donald Trump was president in 2020, when gasoline prices were plunging, he didn't like the fact that the free market was allowing gasoline prices to plunge. There was a price war going on between OPEC and Russia, and oil prices were plunging, which would be great for the consumer, right? Because if oil is super, super cheap, we could drive whenever we want. But of course, one of the reasons oil was super, super cheap was because demand was low because we're in the middle of a freaking pandemic. So what did Donald Trump do? Again, we'll go over this for the 17th billionth time. Donald Trump made a deal with OPEC and Russia to artificially reduce production of oil by millions of barrels per day. You can search this up. OPEC, Russia, Trump, Fox Business. Search that up. You'll get the Fox Business article on this. And I'm citing Fox for all y'all conservatives out there, especially although some of y'all now think that Fox is too leftist. Go figure. But But there's no caveat for coming out of the lockdowns, for coming out of, you know, people being quarantined or whatever, for people getting back to the regular normal lives. There's no caveat for that. So once demand shot up with artificially reduced supply, the price of gasoline shot up as well. Duh. Anybody who would understand economics would know this, but they don't want economics, they want Trumponomics. So, and yes, tariffs are tactics. Taxes. Even though Trump, we covered that last show, Trump says that tariffs are not taxes, but they are taxes. What, Adlo? What are you saying, what? The reason gas prices shot up is because of Trump's horrible deal. That's what I'm saying. We had like gasoline over $4 a gallon. I bought it for like $2.60 something the other day at Costco here in New Orleans. But it hit over $4 a gallon. Why did it hit over $4 a gallon? Because Trump negotiated a deal in 2020 that lasted into 2022. My conspiracy theory, if I was going to be a conspiracy theorist and I was going to push a conspiracy theory, my conspiracy theory is that when Donald Trump made that deal, he knew that already that the polling data showed that he was going to lose the election. He probably knew that he was toast in the upcoming election. He wasn't going to say it out loud, but he knew that he was toast already. So what did he do? He put a poison pill into the economy to make sure that the next president, i.e. President Biden, would look terrible once gas prices skyrocketing, hoping that people with brains, you know, like myself, like Dude, who's the only other person I've seen talk about this, would say, oh, Trump made the deal to artificially reduce supply and then not do anything about it if demand increased. That was Trump's doing. Trump is to blame for that. Supply and demand, that's how supply and demand works. So the deal, wait, Adlo, it has nothing to do with Trump. So wait, so the deal that Donald Trump made had nothing to do with Trump? Donald Trump's literal deal that he negotiated with Russia and OPEC has nothing to do with Trump, right? Nothing one bit. To Chad, I hope that no matter who wins, we stop the hateful talk on both sides. That's my wish. I will accept Harris. I will accept Trump. Here's the problem with that, Chad, is that my anger and vitriol, any anger and vitriol that comes out of me is because of what Trump wants to do. What Republicans want to do. You know, like, the idea of the Democrats have, like, Kamala Harris wants to, you know, you say she wants price controls. Oh, that's so terrible. Kamala Harris wants to implement price controls because she sees the struggles that American taxpayers, American citizens are dealing with when it comes to the corporate greed that is perpetuating the inflation because corporate profits are at record levels. So it's not simply just a simple fact of, oh, it's, you know, inflation. It's corporate, the greed for corporate profits is what is much of what's driving the inflated price of goods right now. No conservative wants to talk about that unless it somehow benefits them. So when Vice President Harris wanted to do that to help the people, oh no, she's a terrible person. But when Republicans want to install a abortion czar to oversee all abortion, make sure that states report abortions and miscarriages and this, that, and the other, that's somehow good? That's the limited government conservatism that used to be a thing? No, conservatism is dead. It's difficult to even call what they are conservatives at this point because they don't want to have limited government. Again, they want Trump to be king. They want Donald Trump to be king of the world, or maybe at least king of the United States, because Trump would then bend over backwards or forwards, however Putin wanted it. Crime is actually down recently, Adlo. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about at 25 million over the border. That's, and I don't know why you spelled it border with a O-A-R-D-E-R. That doesn't make sense. And Adlo says abortion went back to the states. It should have never gone back to the states. That's the thing. The idea that abortion went back to the states is not a good thing. And as soon as the horrible ruling of Dobbs v. Jackson took place, the conservative states jumped at the opportunity to put in restrictions that would stop people like Kate Cox from saving her own life and her own physical health. Kate Cox, when I was watching Kate Cox at the DNC, she, again, if you don't remember, Adlo, if you don't know which one Kate Cox is, that's one of the ones that tried to sue the state of Texas to enable her to be able to get an abortion because her doctor said that if she didn't get an abortion, she could die, she could suffer sepsis, she could lose her fertility. All of things are supposed to be covered under Texas's abortion law, sort of. But the Texas Supreme Court said no. The Texas Supreme Court lied in their ruling, saying that her lawyer didn't introduce information from the doctor when they did. Ken Paxton said that he would sue and go after any hospital that would perform a procedure. So Kate Cox had to flee the state of Texas to go get the needed abortion for the pregnancy that was already in the middle of being ended, but they couldn't end it because they couldn't do anything about it because there was still technically a pulsating blood vessel or heart, or I don't know what point of development the heart was at this point, probably a heart at this point, but there was already a heartbeat, so therefore they couldn't do anything, even though amniotic fluid was leaking and there was a risk of sepsis sinking in. The pregnancy was doomed. There was no way to save this pregnancy, none whatsoever. But the state of Texas and their horrible laws would have forced her to either die or risk death or to risk permanent physical injury. And I don't even know if the state of Texas would consider the loss of a uterus to be enough of an injury to cause somebody to be able to get an abortion. Well, she fled the state. And when I was watching her talk, she was smiling about what happened to her. And at the beginning, I was like, this is kind of weird. Why is she smiling? And then I realized why, because she announced her pregnancy and that her child is now due in January. So because she was able to save her own life, because she was able to go to a state that allows abortions to take place, because she was able to save her reproductive health via the abortion, via the procedure that would remove the dying fetus from her body and save her ability to reproduce in the future, she's now going to have a kid. I thought that's what Republicans wanted, for people to be able to give birth. She was trying to give birth once, and she failed because her body failed her, or the fetus, whatever, failed her. It's not her fault, but biology failed her. And the law prevented her from trying to save her own damn life. Anybody else who couldn't afford to leave the state, they'd have been screwed. They wouldn't be having a baby now. They might have lost their uterus, or they might have even died. But y'all want these people to risk their own lives for a abortion on a pregnancy that's doomed. It's disgusting. It's not pro-life. There's nothing pro-life about that. So absolutely, 100%. I don't care. You could point to me and tell me that Vice President Harris is, I'm not saying that this is the case, but you could sit here and tell me that Vice President Harris is going to pass a legislation that's going to tax me 5% more of all my income. That I'm going to have to pay maybe I might have to pay $5,000 to $10,000 more a year in taxes under Vice President Harris if she becomes president. You know what? I'll say, oh well, I'll deal with it when I get there, because the amount of money going into my wallet isn't worth people having to suffer and die. If you put a little extra money going into your wallet over other people's ability to save their own lives, then I'm sorry, that's a vile human being. That would make you a vile human being. Period. You're putting money over people's lives. It's sick. It's twisted. It's evil. But somehow the conservatives have somehow managed to convince everybody that they're the party of holy holy family values. F that. It's not family values to force a mother to die when she already has a kid and she wants another. To force children to be without one of their parents because you won't let them get a needed procedure. That's not family values. That's not good. That's pure evil. It's sick. It's sick, twisted, and wrong. And frankly, everybody who supports that BS should be damned ashamed of themselves. If you support those laws that Texas put in and Louisiana put in, and that all these other states are putting in that prevent abortion, you're a sick, twisted individual. And you might say, oh, well, Dan, you're just being vitriolic and you're being... No! I'm calling you out for having horrible opinions on this shouldn't be a matter of politics. It shouldn't be political to have somebody be able to save their own life. But that's what it's come to. That's how twisted the brains of some of these conservatives have become. That they're just unwilling to look at any science and save anybody's lives. During the pandemic, look at what happened during the pandemic. People were like, your health is your business. That's what a conservative would say. Your health is your business. They didn't give a rat's ass if their activities caused your grandma to die early because they had to go to the bar, or they wanted to go shoot some pool, or they wanted to go to Disney World. They wanted to go to some other place, some big gathering. They wanted to go to a Trump rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Killed Herman Cain. The right to swing your fist stops well before it hits my face. But you think you should be able to swing your fists in the air all willy-nilly, and it doesn't matter who you hit. The logic behind the arguments of that you should be able to do whatever it is you want during a freaking pandemic is the same type of logic goes, oh, well, I have a gun. I should be able to shoot it in the air randomly. It doesn't matter if it comes down and hits anybody. Once the bullets comes up, who cares where they come down? That's not my department, says MAGA Trump supporters. Wait, Adlo, are you talking to me when it says the government should have all control? No. Texas law is government having control. If you support Texas's law, you're supporting government having total control over women's bodies, over the bodies of people who can get pregnant, be they women, be they non-binary, be they gender non-conforming, be they trans men who have not yet fully transitioned and still have a working uterus. Anybody who can get pregnant, their bodies are now under the control of the states that pass these draconian, sorry, not draconic, they're not dragons, draconian abortion laws that would force them to risk their own life or force them to get sepsis before they could act. It's sick. It's absolutely sick. What's wrong with you? What is wrong with anybody? I don't understand the mindset of somebody who would think it's okay to force somebody to die for a pregnancy. Now, if they want to, if you believe that, the fetus that is, in a uterus with amniotic fluid leaking out of it still has a chance to live and could possibly do that despite the doctors telling you, look, this is hopeless. If you still want to deny the doctors the ability to do that procedure and want to just give it a risk, more power to you. You should be free to do that. My religion that I was raised under says that you have to abort in that position. Judaism says you have to abort if it's to save your own life. But I don't want to push my religious beliefs on you. But y'all want to push your religious beliefs on us. What pandemic? Oh, I don't know. What pandemic? Nick, are you enjoying the show so far? Wait, you did When You Were Born. What are you talking about? I mean, that was a deleted message, but I still want to know what you were talking about. Harris wants your guns. Under what proposal is Harris going to ban your guns? I think Harris has walked back some of her original gun control ideas. Harris does want universal background checks. Universal background checks is supported by like 90% of all voters, and even 80% of all people who are gun owners want universal background checks. They don't want loopholes. Why do you want me to be able to transfer a gun to somebody else who shouldn't be able to have one? Why shouldn't we make sure that every single gun ownership transfer from one person to the other is done between two legal people? Make it harder for people to move those guns around. Get a paper trail going so that, you have this gun, there's a paper trail attached to it, and if for some reason, it got lost, well, you have to report it that it was lost, if it was lost. And then you have to be like, okay, well, if the gun has committed a crime and it goes back to you, then you have to answer for, well, when did you get rid of this gun? Who did you sell it to? Et cetera, et cetera. We don't have universal background checks, Odlo. That's the problem. There are background checks in many circumstances, but not all circumstances. There should be background checks in every transfer of gun ownership from one person to another. There is currently not. I'm not talking about going to a gun store. What if I want to go buy a gun in a private sale? What about a private gun sale? Is that from a private owner, from one private owner to another? Does that private owner have to determine that I'm legally capable of owning a weapon? No? Exactly, Big Hook. Private sales, gun shows. Exactly. So you're twisting my arguments around. You're saying that there's no background checks existing when that's not what I said. I'm saying I want universal background checks because background checks are not currently universal. They exist for many transactions, but they don't exist for all of them. They should exist for all of them. 90% of all Americans, 80% of all gun owners believe that. Yeah, nobody's business until Uvalde happens. And then when Uvalde happens, they'll be like, it's too soon to talk about it. We can't talk about it now. It's too soon. Don't pretend like you give a crap about kids who die in school shootings if you then want to say, oh, it's too soon. I mean, can you own meth? I mean, there are a lot of people who are on the right who sometimes I think must be on meth because of, well, the way that they blindly support Trump is that you have to be on some controlled substance. I don't know. And I'll tell you, I don't believe that law-abiding citizens should be prevented from owning like a gun. You own a shotgun, you own a rifle, you can own a handgun. But you should just be able to have to take a background check before you obtain ownership of said thing, of said weapon. Because they're frickin' dangerous. If I have a private sale of an automobile, I have to go to the government and record that. But yet not a gun. It's absurd. See, Adlo, that's a straw man argument. You're gaslighting right now. Nobody's saying that legal gun owners should be able to not be able to protect themselves. There was a case, I think the guy's name was Merritt Landry here in New Orleans. He worked for the city. He had somebody breaking into his house and he shot and killed the person. I don't have a problem with it. If you're breaking into somebody's house, I firmly support the idea of a true castle doctrine, i.e., if somebody's trying to break into your house, you have the right to defend yourself, and you don't have to assume any good faith on their part. You're free to assume all the bad faith on their part, and if they're coming into your house, that they're a threat to your life, and therefore you're free to take action to protect yourself, and which includes using lethal force. No problem with that whatsoever. None whatsoever. Problem is that they've taken, but using the castle doctrine should be a affirmative defense. And affirmative defenses used to require that you, the person raising an affirmative defense, have to prove the affirmative defense. Now, in the case of a home invasion, typically an affirmative defense would simply be, oh, well, see this police report? The police are confirming the fact that this person was trying to break into my house when I shot the person. Therefore, clearly, I am raising and I've proven my case beyond reasonable, or not even beyond reasonable. You don't have to do it beyond reasonable doubt. You can just do it preponderance of the evidence, I think, in most cases when it used to pertain to raising an affirmative defense. Now, these conservative legislatures, supported by ALEC, have drafted these laws, like Stand Your Ground laws, that change the whole legal premise of an affirmative defense and no longer require the person raising it to prove it. The idea of an affirmative defense is that, yes, I did the thing that's typically not legal, but here's why it's legal. And then the person raising the affirmative defense has to prove the affirmative defense. And that's always been how it's been. But now they've made it easier for people just to shoot anybody and claim, oh, well, it's self-defense. Well, prove it. Now it's up to the government to prove that it's not true, which means that the government has to prove a negative, which is the logical fallacy, which is why these Stand Your Ground laws are BS, because they put the burden of proof for affirmative defenses on the wrong person. I wasn't planning on talking about this show, but, it happens. We sometimes go off topic, and
it is what it is.
Thank you, Donald. Doop, 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 doop. Let's see. Do you walk around with your assault rifle? He asks Adlo. I mean, there's a video out there that actually shows you the biases that take place in our society. You had two people in an open carry state. One of them a white dude and one of them a black dude. The white dude walking around in an open carry state has I think it was an AR. It might not have been an AR brand type rifle. It might have been another type of semi-automatic rifle. Walking around the streets, police officer approaches him, has a nice conversation with him. The guy asserts his constitutional rights, blah blah blah, and he's allowed to go on freely. Black person walking around the streets, same type of laws, same type of open carry allowed. Guess what? Police stop, police hide behind their car, police raise the guns and point it at him, force the person to get on the ground and put the gun aside, force the black person's pregnant girlfriend, who also is black, to get down on the curb even though she's very pregnant. All because blackness is viewed as a threat. Let's stop and frisk. There was recently conversations about stop and frisk. I think even Donald Trump brought it up. I don't remember the context, but stop and frisk. Conservatives love stop and frisk because stop and frisk targets black and brown people. Doesn't target white people. So that's why conservatives have no problem with stop and frisk. They have no problem with government using governmental force to strip guns away from black people and brown people. They just don't want the government to take it away from them. Oh, Adlo. Fake news. Soon-to-be Vice President Walz did not dodge Iraq. He gave his notice that he would like to not continue with his service well before any sort of announcement was made that his unit was going to be heading off to Iraq. So you can just stop with that BS right then and there. So, oh, we have a caller. Hold on, caller. Hopefully you're my friend. You're the same friend from yesterday and last show. Yes, after 24 years of service as well. Had a long, good service, and just because they don't like that he's a Democrat, they're going to denigrate him in his service. Meanwhile, J.D. Vance was what, a reporter for the Marines or something? Is that what he was? Is that what he did when he was serving? I mean, fine. But I don't think he has any sort of moral high ground to be judging Vice President candidate Walz for his service. And scared to serve, what about President Bone Spurs? Donald Trump who never served. Donald Trump who denigrates the service of others. You can't claim to be supportive of the troops and then support the guy who asks what was in it for them. And we've come full circle. All right. Caller, what's your name? Where are you from?
Hey, my dear friend.
Oh, good to hear you again.
Liberal Dan, how is everything with you?
Oh, I had a long day, but otherwise it was good. How are you doing today, sir?
Yes, I appreciate you asking. I'm hanging tight. You know, if you guys research on Vance, for example, he is part of the elite and the New World Order. And he was a Bilderberg meeting, head of the Bilderberg meeting for 5-6 years in a row. So
this is J.D. Vance?
Yes, you can type it. And he was a part of New World Order, or just say part of the Bilderberg, and you will see a lot of articles that are from the good information sources. So, you know, everything is a sham, my friend, unfortunately. And, you know, Donald Trump elected, nothing will be changed in this country, and or either one of them, basically. But, I mean, maybe with Kamala, we get a little bit better, hopefully Medicare, and maybe increase their food stamp to 600 maybe for 2 people. And so maybe that. Otherwise, pretty much both systems, both of them are part of the New World Order system. And, you know, they say that they are not, but in reality, they are.
I mean, anybody who's part, if there is a grand conspiracy, and I'm not necessarily buying into the whole New World Order thing and Bilderberger thing, whatever. That's whatever. But it is true that J.D. Vance was raised through the ranks because billionaires funded his rise and basically supported his elevation way to the top. Peter Thiel was Vance's most prominent benefactor over the years. He hired Vance at a global investment firm in 2017, then nurtured his political rise, donating $15 million to his 2022 Ohio Senate campaign, and then helping him win a close-fought primary before he went on to capture the seat in the general election. Since then, Vance he's also received other tech mega investors, like venture capitalists, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Chamath Palihapitiya, an early senior executive at Facebook, and David Sachs, who was one of the first at developing PayPal. Sachs chipped in $1 million of his personal fortune to a pro-Vance super PAC. But the Thiel is the most consequential one. Thiel is the one that has gotten him the most push up there and elevated him into skyrocketing levels of fame amongst the Republicans. And, well, it's definitely enough to cause somebody to have questions and raise eyebrows as to why did a multimillionaire pick this one guy to elevate up? What is up with this one guy, and what makes him so special? probably because he knows that he could probably be controlled, and they're hoping maybe that him being number 2 might then make him move on to be number 1, and then they could have real control. Regardless of if you believe in conspiracy theories, you definitely know that Peter Thiel will have the ear into the West Wing, because he has been such a big proponent and supporter of J.D. Vance. So yes, it definitely raises eyebrows and makes me question a lot of things.
Yeah, people need to question everything, my friend. And, we must question everything. We must go deep inside the Vance. Who was the Vance? What he has done. He was in Davos too, I'm sure. He has been there too. If I'm wrong, then next time you can correct me. But I'm sure these people all are part of the same.
I just happen to think, though, that I do think that there is, I think, a much more existential threat when it comes to Trump than when it comes to Harris. I mean, for anybody who for anybody who disagrees with what Harris wants to implement, clearly you view at least some of what she wants to do as a good thing. I think the things that Harris wants to implement versus Agenda 47, Project 2025, AE Project Gilead, I think the existential threat is there. I think it makes it that much more dangerous to have another term of President Trump. So, is there anything else you wanted to throw in before we move on to the next subject?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Indeed. You are absolutely right on what you said. The last from beginning to end, I accept 100%, and of course Kamala Harris would be much better choice for Americans, and also regarding we have open source intelligence for you. In fact, Ayatollahs, not Iran, because Iranian people, 80% of them, they hate Ayatollahs, and they did not vote for the Mohammad Pezeshkian, the new president of Ayatollahs, and they stayed home, and they did not even went out to see what's going on. So basically, Iranians, they know that they hate the Ayatollahs, but unfortunately their hands are very tight, and they cannot really change this bloody regime that is shaking the Middle East every day, and their proxies, Yemen, Hezbollah, Hamas, and pretty much also south of Iraq as well too. They have proxies. So, I mean, this bloody regime needs a preemptive strike from Israel, and it will come soon, my friend, because Iran by October 1st will have 100 atom bombs, and that would be end of it will be like North Korea, basically. And if this continues, and if we hope sooner it's preemptive, and the rest of it, Iranian inside Iran will take care of the rest of the things into their hands, and they will overthrow Ayatollahs for sure. But we need little bit help. Even France was under Hitler, Germany. You know what French people said to America? Please come and bomb us. Please come and bomb us and free us from the Hitler.
Yep.
So, I mean, they had no other alternative. So, same thing. Iranians inside Iran, 90% of them want them to have preemptive strike on the Ayatollah forces, so they be weakened, and Iranians will do the rest.
I mean, sometimes you have to support the people who are doing that. Oh, we got another caller on the line. So, that's another one with all ones. So we'll see. But again, I want to thank you for calling in again. Appreciate you. I appreciate you calling into the show, and hope to hear from you again soon. All right, my friend?
Sure. Thank you.
All right.
Put
You have
me
a
on
great
hold,
one.
please.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, sir.
All right, other caller. I'm hoping either you're from the Atlanta or you're somebody nice and not somebody who's gonna troll. But we're gonna take it. We're gonna risk it for a biscuit and go on to the next caller. Head caller, what's your name? Where are you from? Hello, caller. Going. Nope. Caller dropped. Bye, caller. All right. So let us talk about. Chad talks about while our friend was talking. I did notice that Chad was talking about Kamala Harris and the border wall. Let's go back and rewind to Joe Biden and the border wall, because people were critical of President Biden and his wanting his continuing construction on the border wall. Why was Joe Biden continuing the border wall when he was against it as a candidate? Well, it's because Congress appropriated funds towards it, and he had no choice but to then spend those funds as they were appropriated. He was not allowed to reappropriate appropriated funds. Congress holds the purse strings, and then the president implements it. So if Congress says we're going to put in money to build the darn wall, then Biden is forced to build the darn wall. So now, does Vice President Harris, has she flip-flopped? Has she changed her mind on building the wall? Well, Vice President Harris has said that she would sign the recently pushed bipartisan border security bill, which Trump ordered his allies to kill. Remember, Trump said, don't pass this, because if you pass this, it's going to hurt my chances of winning re-election. Why is it going to hurt his chances of winning re-election? Well, as part of the compromise that took place as part of this bipartisan compromise bill, it included hundreds of millions of dollars of unspent funds to be used to continue building the wall on the border. Does this mean that Vice President Harris wants to build the wall? Does this mean that she's all of a sudden, yay, let's build this wall because it's magically going to work these days? No, it means that President Harris understands how politics works and understands that even though Democrats don't like the idea of a border wall because it's just plain stupid, because you could either dig a tunnel or build a ladder or, find another route into the country. I mean, you can't build a wall out into the ocean. If you just go this way, go around, you can go around the wall too, But because the legislation that she supports would require the Trump's border wall to be built, but it includes other things that the administration, the Harris administration, would want, and so they're willing to accept the compromise of building the stupid wall in order to get the other things in the legislation that they wanted to pass done. That's how compromise works. You give up on some things that you might want. You give the other side some things that they might want, and you get something in return for that, for either giving up on something you wanted or giving the other side something that you wanted. You gain something that you wanted. That's how compromise works. It doesn't mean Vice President Harris is like, yeah, the wall is great now, woohoo! No, that's not what that means. It means that she's willing to be an adult, and she's willing to work with people on the other side of the aisle to get crap done for the American people. The horror of it all. So no, it's not that we don't want to talk about Harris and the wall. It's that we reject your framing of the argument that magically she now supports the wall because she's supporting the legislation that includes the wall, but also includes a whole bunch of other stuff. Right? No, she didn't decide to compromise right before the election. The Biden-Harris administration already pushed this bill I don't believe Vice President Harris ever came out against the bipartisan bill. And she said that she did say at the convention that if it comes across her desk, that again, if it would be reintroduced into the Senate and the House and would be passed during her term, if she becomes president, that she will sign it into law. It's not all of a sudden. It's an existing bill that tried to get passed that who killed? Donald Trump. You should ask yourself, why is Donald Trump magically against the wall being built? It's because the wall is not about security. It has nothing to do with security. It's his vanity project. The border wall is a Donald Trump vanity project. Just like he wanted the military parade in his honor, he wants the wall built in his honor too. And he'll be damned if they're going to build the wall during anybody else's term. Trump wants it to be Trump's wall. And if somebody else builds it, he's going to be mad. Bigly mad. It's not all of a sudden. It's her saying that she's going to support legislation that the current administration, of which she's a part of, supported already. But why 6 months before the election season and not when it was at the peak? Like, what? I don't understand that point. Tim, I don't know about you all, but I'm not against finishing the Harris wall. It'd be funny if we just labeled it Kamala Harris's wall and that would just give Donald Trump an aneurysm. That was my wall. I had the wall first. Nobody builds better walls than me. It's the best wall. Walls work in a house. Adlo. Mike, yes. Biden was forced previously, before this, before the legislation was passed, Biden was forced to spend appropriated funds in the manner in which they were appropriated. As president, Biden can't be like, oh, Congress, I'm going to pass $1 billion bill and I'm going to spend it on, we're going to authorize $1 billion of spending on drug research. Biden can't then go, I want to go to pay for Ukrainian weapons. He can't do that because the funds were appropriated for drug research, so they have to be used towards drug research. He can't just spend the money as he sees fit. He has to spend the money on the research that the appropriated funds were allocated for. So if Biden, if a Congress passes a piece of legislation and includes in the legislation money to do construction on a wall, and it's specifically allocated for the purpose of building a wall, and Biden signs the legislation into law, guess what? He has to then implement that spending. He can't spend it on anything else. What's 920 pages? I see you, Big Hook, calling. Hold on, I'll get to you in a second. What's 920 pages? Project 2025? I mean, people said you couldn't read the entire healthcare bill, the Affordable Care Act, and I did during the course of its trying to get passed because I took the time and I read it. As simple as that. Hey, Big Hook, what's going on? Good to see you. Good to hear from you, at least.
Yeah, I just wanted to call in and say congratulations on getting through that DNC thing. It certainly was a celebration for many, many folks and lifted many, many spirits, including us Canadians, because it was sort of like, yeah, it's nice to see things rolling along and some sanity is, carrying over into the majority of the population, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Have you seen the video comparing the Georgia delegation announcing the Republican delegates versus the Democratic one? They did it like, here's Georgia, here's the Republicans doing the Georgia delegates, and here's the Democrats doing the Georgia delegates, and it's just night and day. Like boring old coots, we like to give our 90 delegates to Donald Trump. Woo. And then all of a sudden on the other, yeah. And you have little John coming out, and, we're not the same.
Well,
we're clearly not the same. Anybody wants to say,
Well,
both parties are the same. No. Look at the conventions. Both parties are clearly not the same.
Well, it was almost like the Republican one looked like people who were being ushered into hell, and the Democrats looked like it was being ushered into heaven. It was sort of clearly that different. I mean, one was offering hope and salvation, and the other was like, yeah, and things are only going to get worse, and the only way we can fix things is by punishing everyone that we think looks at us funny. I don't know. It's a bizarre thing. My main concern is and Rachel Maddow has been harping on it endlessly, is these people that are threatening to not certify the vote.
You're burying. I knew you were going to say that, and you're burying the lead. That's yeah. You buried the lead. That's
because here's the thing. Like, what do you do? I mean, outside of Kemp saying, "Oh well, we need to put. Can we just take these people out of the mix, or can we do something else that's drastic?" I mean, what do you do? I mean, do you have somebody there on site to do an audit and say, you don't have final say, we have final say? I mean, I don't know that much about how it's done, but there has to be some sort of a national standard. I mean, this stuff just seems to go on and on and on, and it's frustrating because every time you turn the corner, there's another one that says, "Oh well, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that," and then it's like Project 2025. I mean, Hal Sparks has been doing a wonderful review of that. I mean, it's there's just like they don't know how to run government, and every time they do report, they're just like, and here's how we gum up the works and make it miserable for everyone. And
well, that's been the running joke, is that Republicans will be like, government sucks, elect us and we'll show you how, because they don't want to govern. They don't know how to govern. But yeah, I mean, I hadn't watched too much Maddow recently, because usually Maddow's on when I'm either prepping for the show or during the show. And I guess I could record it and watch it later, but still, or watch the later rerun or the later playing of it. Thing is that no, that's again, you kind of buried the lead on that one. We were gonna get there. Trust me, we were actually getting there tonight about the sinister plan of Trump.
That.
But there's a reason why they wanted it. I don't think, to get ahead of myself, again, to get where we were going to be. I don't think there's actually a case. There has been times when certain Republicans have either voted just against certification of everything, but either in those situations all the Democrats in the same area voted to certify, so therefore the votes against certification were meaningless. Or there are times when, maybe once or twice when the Republicans who might have controlled the certification process might have said, hey, we're not going to certify this, but then state laws come in, I think universally. I don't necessarily think there's an overall national standard. I mean, there is the rules that the elections have to be certified by a date certain, but I think the states also have requirements that they have to be certified by a date certain, and therefore the power that's instilled in these local boards to not certify have been kind of taken away in the most part. But there's nefarious things going on there, and we will be getting that into in a little bit. But yeah, you are right to be concerned about it. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Go right ahead.
Does Roberts overturning the Civil Rights Act, did that have the play? Because it was like, oh, now, you don't have to ask for permission to do changes in the law of election or anything else, or racism doesn't exist anymore because Obama got in. Now, my question is that a result of what Roberts did? Because it basically said, you can fuck with the election as much as you possibly want now at this point, because the gloves are off. It's fight to the death.
Well, it doesn't stop the Justice Department from suing states for implementing discriminatory law, but what the requirement for pre-clearance was that if certain states that had proven themselves to be not trustworthy when it comes to voter rights, these certain states were proven that hey, we can't be trusted, so therefore in order for them to pass these rules, the Justice Department had to do pre-clearance of any legislation that wanted to be passed to make sure that they were going to be, in the Justice Department's eyes at least, not disenfranchising voters. But yes, once Roberts came down with that terrible ruling, and I have a video on this about the GOP stealing the vote or whatever, and basically the thing I said there, because I live in New Orleans, and New Orleans is protected by the Mississippi River. The logic that John Roberts used of, well, we haven't had situations of massive voter disenfranchisement of minorities since these laws were passed, so therefore we don't need the laws anymore. Basically, it's akin for me as if I were to say, well, New Orleans hasn't been flooded by the Mississippi River in 100 years or more, so therefore we don't need the levees anymore, because since we haven't flooded, why do we need the levees anymore? It's the levees that are protecting us from flooding. It's the laws that were preventing these states from passing these horrible laws. And again, once that Supreme Court ruling came down overturning those parts of the VRA, these states were able to pass a whole bunch of laws. Now, I don't know if the laws granting additional powers to like the legislature to come in and overturn local, state, whatever rulings, I don't know if that would have needed pre-clearance or not, but many of these laws that have been passed to try and disenfranchise voters have absolutely been stemmed from or were created, and even they were in the pipeline. Like, there was actually one Texas law that was passed, or that was wanted to be passed, and as soon as the ruling came down, they're like, now it's law, and then they got to disenfranchise people. So yeah.
Yeah, because, you look at it. Even in Texas now, apparently they're breaking down doors from people of Mexican heritage, telling them, you're not qualified to vote, and this and that and the other thing, and, trying to break down organizations that are basically trying to get out the vote and whatnot. I just don't know what you do about it. This is the thing. It's just frustrating, because it seems like every time there seems to be a measure in place, like, for example, Kemp went and decided, you can challenge somebody's vote.
Right.
And you have these people that are like, have these thousand names list that they go down and they go and they challenge the vote, and unless you checked your registration and found out that somebody challenged your vote, you may not be able to vote on the given day, right?
On federal elections, you have provisional ballots that might allow you to do it. But yes, it's one of the ways that I was going to talk about too, about the ways that they're trying to steal the election for Donald Trump. One of which is like states like especially Georgia, Iowa, and other states probably have it as well. The ability to just challenge somebody's right to vote and then making them jump through hoops to prove that they're eligible. And if they don't, then they lose their ability to vote, even though they were accurately and correctly registered previously. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing, and I don't know if the Voting Rights Act would have stopped that from happening or not. I have a pretty good understanding of the law. I don't know if that would have been covered, but it might have been. But the thing, it's one of the sinister ways. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, can I ask another question then?
Sure.
How is it that they're able to institute these measures when they can't show standing, that nobody has been harmed? We're instituting a law, and it's like, who was harmed? Who is
Well,
the
that's
victim? Where is the voter fraud that has changed the outcome of the election?
Well, that's an
what I
interesting
don't
thing.
understand, because
That's an interesting thing, is that you don't, when it comes to, like, standing is more of an issue of courts. Like, if I want to go to court and I want to sue the state over something that they've done, I have to prove that I was somehow harmed, or that I'm representing a class that was somehow harmed. And actually, even in that case, Justice Thomas disagrees with that. But when it comes to laws,
but then doesn't the government have to prove that there's standing, that the government can show that there was an actual overturn of an election based on, voter fraud?
I have made the argument that it should be that way, that government should have to prove that it has the authority to restrict certain actions or do certain things when it comes to anything, be it individual actions or stuff like this. However, unfortunately, no, the government doesn't have to actually. The government can pass any legislation that it wants, if there, like, not anything that it wants, but the government can create a solution with no problem, and they can pass a solution with no problem, just because they want to fearmonger and pander to the, certain presidential candidates and their supporters that, like, they want to. Like, they don't have to. Yeah, they absolutely don't have to prove to anybody that there's massive, because there's not massive voter fraud. There's not massive voter fraud when it comes to, like, voter ID. If you look, this is in one of my other videos. I think it's the same video, same playlist. When it comes to the GOP coup, I think the whole thing is the GOP coup, and in that playlist, you basically have whole bunches of ways that the Republicans have tried to steal elections and maintain minority rule. And I'm losing my train of thought because I was going to say something and now I forgot. But what was I saying earlier?
Yeah.
But the point is that
I know
is that they can. Oh yeah, voter fraud. So in that video, I cited the Heritage Foundation. The hyper-conservative Heritage Foundation has a website that you can go to and look at all of the examples of, like, election fraud and voting fraud that that have happened over the past, like, 10, 20, 30 years or something. And I'm not going to doubt the veracity of the list.
Do that? George Bush did it, or something, and they found, like, over however many elections there was, like, literally, like, 0.0000001% voter fraud. I mean, they said, and it was it had absolutely zero effect on the outcome of the election.
Right.
I mean,
if you look at the website and you look at the amount of cases that are pertaining to the lack to, like, using, like, a wrong ID or any of these cases that would be like, oh, we need a voter ID. So you needed a voter ID to vote or whatever. No, most of the, 0.00001% of all of the cases that are listed on the website might have been prevented if you had an ID requirement, or if the person was required to show an ID, because the win that you get from getting an extra vote or something, or for voting illegally, is not worth the risk of voting illegally and the punishment if you're caught. So nobody's really doing all this. But the reason that these Republican legislatures pass these so-called voter ID laws, the solution without a problem is the requirement to show a voter ID. Now, I'm not necessarily opposed to the requirement to show a voter ID. North Carolina implemented a poll tax because they would charge you a fee for the ID. But there are other issues that had nothing to do with showing an ID to vote that are contained within these so-called voter ID laws that, do things like eliminate certain forms of early voting, eliminate other things that, in North Carolina, the judge that overturned the North Carolina so-called voter ID law said that the legislature targeted black voters with surgical precision to try and make sure that all the ways that they voted were taken away, that their clear intent was to stop black people from voting. And even though, and this is fun, this is the fun game, to play. I've played this a lot of times, and I have many screenshots of this on my Liberal Dan account on Facebook. Not on Liberal Dan Radio on Facebook, but on Liberal Dan on Facebook. I've told people, I say, look, my problem with these so-called voter ID laws are not the requirement to show an ID. It's the other parts of the legislation that has nothing to do with showing a voter ID. That's my problem. But even though I've said all that, some idiot is going to come around and is going to say, what's wrong with showing a voter ID? Because they don't pay attention. Because once they hear the words voter ID...
Indians, when the Indians had the same problem. They said, oh, well, now you have to have an aforementioned address or a post office box, and like many of the people on the reserves didn't have that, and so
Right.
as a result, they were trying to steal their votes from that.
They did steal their votes from that. They probably stole that election too, because that was they basically said that you can't use a PO box. You have to use a literal address, and they had no literal addresses on the reservation, so therefore their driver's license is no longer counted. That was North Dakota, I believe, where that happened, and yeah, it's horrible. And I think the amount of votes that were lost in that particular election were more than the amount of votes that the Republican won by. Just like the whole when Katherine Harris in 2000 purged the voting rolls of mostly black voters because they were former felons, she cast a wide net, and she didn't take the time to actually care whether or not the person was actual felon or not. They kicked the person off the voting rolls if their name happened to be a close match. So, and then those people showed up to vote, and they couldn't vote. And because they didn't have provisional ballots back then, because the 2000 election was caused the creation of provisional ballots, George Bush won Florida, therefore George Bush won the election.
Well, here's
wait. Before you say anything, Chad in the chat, I was not being critical of voter ID. You did what I predicted you would do. I did not have to. We're not being critical of the ID. We're being critical of the other parts of the legislation that are not having to do with the requirement to show an ID. Go ahead, Big Hook.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, you got me, lost my train of thought as well.
That happens.
Yeah. The thing that gets me is that, like, for example, Jack Smith went and reinstituted the charges and took out all the stuff that they said that they objected to, saying, oh, well, you can't have whatever conversations between Trump and his attorney general and all these people, because that's protected whatever,
right, privilege,
you know, as to how the charges were laid. And so then he redid it. My question is then, do you think the Supreme Court is going to somehow figure out another way to go around that, or is this just, or, you know, because
there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to try to bend over and backwards for Trump, especially, well, here's the thing. At this point in time, this case is not going to be heard before the election. So either Trump loses and they're not going to care at this point, or they might not care. They might not try and bend over backwards, or Trump wins and then the case goes away once Trump wins, because, you know, once he takes the oath of office, he's able to stop all federal investigations into him. Right now, the only case that matters at this point is the New York case and the sentencing in the New York case, which we find out, I think, next month. So,
yeah, I think it's on the 10th of September or something like that. That's when Marchand decides what his sentence will be, or whether he defers the sentence to after the election or whatever.
Or if there even is a sentence, because they might say, oh, first thing, no sentence, or they might give probation or something or whatever. What I want to know is if Florida law basically says if you are a felon in another state, you only lose your right to vote in Florida if the other state says you can't vote either. Does that mean that if Donald Trump gets put into prison but yet he voted early, does that mean his early vote was fraudulent?
Yeah. I just thought of what I was going to ask you before.
Okay.
Why is it that citizens can't sue politicians? And because it means that the politicians are above law. You know, I mean, if you can't say, if a politician takes away your right to vote, and you have no way of punishing the politician for stealing your right to vote, then what is to stop them from doing it again and again and again? I mean,
I agree with you. If it's done purposely, maliciously, they should be. I think they should be locked up for violating civil rights. But unfortunately, the action was done as it's just like in most cases. Why can't you go after the CEO of a company because you've created this fictitious thing called a corporation that shields the CEO and people from many wrongdoings done by the corporation.
Yeah,
So.
it just doesn't make any sense, and that's one of the things that bothers me, because especially like all around the world, especially the European nations, look at us and go, "What the fuck are you guys doing?"
Yeah.
You let these guys get away with murder, right, left, and center, and then when you do find somebody, you know, you give them a slap on the wrist. I mean, what was it? I mean, after the bank collapse, I mean, what did they do? They charged one guy who was from Switzerland, of all things. I mean, that was the only guy that got punished for cheating everybody and doing the mortgage collapse and everything else.
Sorry. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, the only time that, you know, that the law seems to be instituted, at least internationally, is when the U.S. decides, oh, well, there's something unjust, we have to go to war with you. And that's about the only time, and more often than not, they commit crimes more heinous than the ones that were already committed sometimes. I don't know. It's just, war never makes sense to me at all, but...
Well, Adlohim, Adlohim in the chat did give us something that was potentially actually helpful to the chat. Section 1983 of federal law allows citizens to sue state or local government officials, such as police officers, election officials, or school resource officers for violating rights granted by the U.S. Constitution or federal laws. To win, you must show that the official acted under the color of state law, which means they misused their authority as a government official to enforce the law. However, government officials are generally immune from liability if their actions didn't violate constitutional or statutory rights that a reasonable government employee should have known. Federal officials may also be protected from liability by qualified immunity, blah, blah, blah. But here's the problem, and here's one of the things that I've talked about on the show as well, is that this Supreme Court, or even before it became this Supreme Court, has ruled that, I forget the case where this happened in, but it basically said that if the police officer believed the law was X and punished you and like arrested you or stopped you under that law and was wrong, that's not a reason to throw out the case. So the Supreme Court basically says that there's no duty for the police officer, for example, or any other government official to actually know what the laws are. If they thought what they were doing was legal and it wasn't, then that takes away the intent and it ruins your ability to bring a suit. So, you know.
So basically, you plead ignorance and get off.
Pretty much. That's what especially the people who are in charge of this Supreme Court have basically done. They've basically said they've basically taken away a lot of the teeth from the ability of people to come in and go. I mean, you had, what is this, Salinas v. Texas. We all know, everyone knows from TV shows that people have the right to remain silent, and that when people are arrested, they have to be read their Miranda rights because they're assumed to not be constitutional scholars. So therefore, if you're not Mirandized, you're assumed to not know that you have the right to remain silent if you're under arrest. However, in the case of Salinas v. Texas, Salinas was not under arrest. They brought him in for questioning, and he was technically free to go at any time, but he didn't ask if he was free to go. At some point during the questioning, he stopped answering questions and in doing so, he did not specifically invoke his right to remain silent, and because he specifically didn't invoke his Fifth Amendment rights, they used his silence against him in court and convicted him because they basically said, well, because he went silent, we're going to assume that he stopped answering because he was guilty. And as stupid as that sounds, the Supreme Court in Salinas v. Texas said, yep, you're right. If you are not under arrest, you have to invoke your right to remain silent, i.e. if you want to use your right to remain silent, the Supreme Court said you have to speak, which is mind-numbingly stupid. And of course, who wrote Salinas v. Texas? Justice Alito.
Yeah, I'm of full belief that somebody needs to write a book that tells you what to tell the cops and how to handle yourself and how to make sure that you don't incriminate yourself and whatnot. And actually, the police should actually have to have that book on hand, and that if you request it be given to you, so that way you can review your rights and privileges, as well as how not to incriminate yourself, that you be able to take that on, because you shouldn't
even have to ask for the book. They should either give you the book, or they should be required to tell you at all times, what your rights are, because you should be assumed at all times to not be a constitutional scholar. But they're not going to do that, because that's going to make it harder for them to arrest people.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, if it's a case of, if I lie, I get full punishment. If the cops lie, it's part of their job.
Right.
Come on, that's a double standard that nobody agrees with. And I mean, that's the whole thing.
The cops agree with it. The cops love to be able to use whatever loopholes they can use to try and finagle whatever information they want. I basically say, for the most part, you are under no obligation to help the police do anything. Don't give up any information, and always just. I've even told my kids, look, if you're in trouble and you need a cop's help, by all means seek out a cop and get their help. However, if a cop's trying to talk to you, don't even bother, because they're gonna anything that you say can be used against you or used against other people, and they can manipulate you. So just ask to speak to your parents at that point. Ask to call me or your mom, and that's the end of it. But there was one time I used to play a game on my phone, and I would go around this part of the Algiers in Louisiana called Federal City, which used to be a full-on closed-off military base. Now it's only partially closed off to the military, and everything else is open. And I pulled over to do something that I wanted to do in my game, and the police pulled behind me and was like, and turned on his lights, and I'm like, is there a problem? I mean, they're like, can I see your license and registration or whatever? I'm like, why? What did I do? I was like, did you know?
Committed? Yeah.
Right. He was like, did you know that this is the Admiral's house or whatever? And I was like, I do now. I didn't know it before, but you just told me, so now I know. He thought it was suspicious that I stopped by the Admiral's house just randomly or whatever. And I initially was going to say, am I free to go? Or am I being stopped for something, or am I free to go? Apparently, I was smart to not do it, because had I done it, he was a base cop, and because he's a base cop, as a federal cop, he has the authority to detain me for 3 days without question. So I could have been really screwed.
Yeah, that's one of the things that gets me is that when you challenge their authority because you know the law as well as they do, they have a hissy fit and decide that, you challenged my authority and therefore you're a bad guy. And it's like, knowing my rights is not a threat to you.
Right. It should be, at least.
Violating my rights is a threat to me, that's for sure.
Yep.
But, I mean, because that's the thing, I mean, and by the same token, I mean, I'm sorry, you feel threatened by me? You're the guy wearing a bulletproof vest and you've got a Glock on your hip with 3 extra clips
and a taser and a baton.
I mean, like, yeah, it's like, what threat do I possibly, extend to you? I mean, oh wow, I mean, Like, I'm sorry. I mean, unless I do a 1 in a million shot where I actually end up getting you in the head or something like that, I mean, that's about the only thing. The only other thing that would do it would be like if you were standing in front of the car and I just put it into drive. But that's
Right.
those are the only two situations. And, you know, even then, I mean, if I've already got the car turned off, you know, what am I going to do? You know, I mean, like I said, I just get to the point where I'm like, okay, you know, I mean, more often than not, they're just basically looking to fund their things. You know, tickets, provide
Right.
income for the department, and that's what it is. It's less, you know, more, you know, predator policing than anything else, and especially if you happen to be unfortunate enough to be of a minority class where they go and they do that stuff. I mean, John Oliver did a piece on that, how they just basically end up bankrupting these communities because the cops say, oh, well, we need income to be able to police, and it's like, yeah, but you're punishing people who don't have any money to be able to properly fund it, and you're only making the situation worse. You know, I mean, for petty crimes and this and that and the other thing and, you know, whatnot, you know, and it's like, what do you do with that?
Right.
So, but
All right, man. Well,
all right.
I'm gonna move on. I need to respond to some of the things that are said in the chat, and then I'm gonna go ahead and actually talk about Trump's master plan. So, there was a good conversation.
Well, sorry,
Great.
I haiku-ed your main
fine.
topic, but
It's fine. No, I mean it's bound to happen. I have intelligent listeners, so there you go. But I appreciate
right,
the call. It's a great call.
Glad you're
You have a
feeling
good
better
one.
after your COVID attack.
Thank you so much. All right, bye bye.
Okay, take care. Bye.
All right, that was Big Hook. Great call from Big Hook. Really good. Yes, to address some of the things that are being talked about in the chat, they got back around to the topic of abortion. And no, if you have a dangerous pregnancy and you live in a state that you are that does not allow for abortions or won't allow you to get an abortion, it's not as simple as just saying you can go. You can just simply go and go to another state, because some people can't afford to travel, some people can't actually do the travel, and in some cases the travel between states, either by bus like Adlo has suggested, or driving, or the flight, you could potentially have sepsis kick in if you're in a dangerous situation in the travel, and then you're screwed. That's why you have to be able to treat the dangerous pregnancy before the sepsis sets in. You need to be able to treat that. And then, also, you talked about, somebody says, well, don't have sex, have abstinence. Well, abstinence isn't 100% effective in preventing pregnancies. Normally, my response to that is that simply, well, you can't control if somebody's going to sexually assault you. If somebody sexually assaults you and gets you pregnant, then abstinence didn't work for you. But also, there's an entire ass religion based on the idea of somebody being a virgin getting pregnant. So, sorry, abstinence doesn't work to prevent pregnancy. Boom. And then there are people, let's say you are sexually assaulted, and you basically are like, well, there's nothing I can do to stop this. There are cases where if you ask your assailant to just, if you're going to do it, just please use a condom. Some people will take that as you consenting, which it's not, but some idiots will still say that it is. Yes, exactly, Chris. You can go from stable to coding in minutes. And what are you going to do? You can't land the plane if you're mid-flight. You're going to pull the bus. Where's the bus going to go? How are you going to stop what if you're in the middle of a long stretch with no hospital near you during your long-ass bus ride? Chris, yes, I'm aware it also happens in wanted pregnancies, but I'm just trying to make the point to Adlo. So, hold on a second. I need to mute myself for a second. My puppy is barking, and my puppy is barking, and because my puppy is barking, and the kids need to go deal with him because he doesn't sound very happy at all. So Adlo, and what if a comet hits Earth? That has nothing to do with the topic of abortion. You're just being disingenuous at this point. And it shouldn't be a matter of self-control or morals. People should be allowed to have sexual relations for fun. And sometimes birth control fails, and they should be able to do something about it. But the criticisms of these cases, actually, and here's the thing. If you're trying to bring up self-control and morals in the cases of like people like Kate Cox, you're an idiot. I'm saying if, I'm not calling you an idiot per se. I'm just saying if you are trying to bring up morals and self-control in cases like Kate Cox, you frankly are an idiot. Why? Because Kate Cox was not having sex willy-nilly. Kate Cox was having sex to have a baby. She got pregnant because she wanted to be pregnant. They had picked out, Kate Cox and other couples had picked out, clothing and furniture, and were ready to have a kid. But the pregnancy said, sorry, no, I'm gonna fail you. And then what? And then guess what? The state of Texas said, no, we're not gonna allow you to save your own life. That issue is not about morals, of the morals of the person getting abortion. That issue is about the morals of the state, of the people running the state, and how they're immorally trying to use the power of the state to protect somebody from saving their own life. Period. You can't choose adoption if the fetus is in the middle of miscarrying. Now you're just trolling. I don't think you're a serious person. I mean, many people would probably say, well, duh. But you can't have a serious conversation on abortion if in the topic of Kate Cox, you're saying choose adoption. There would be nothing left to adopt. The fetus was a goner. The fetus was going to go away. Bye-bye. The only question was whether or not it was going to take Kate Cox with it. Or how much of Kate Cox would be damaged in the process. Kate Cox was trying to make it so that she could live another day and potentially have another child. And guess what? Because she was allowed to get an abortion in another state, she is now able to get another child, and she's now pregnant, and she's going to be giving birth in January. Mazel tov to the Cox family. How many cases are Kate Cox? Why does it matter? Why does that always the argument of the Republicans to fine? You know what? How many Kate Coxes are there? How many cases are actually of voter ID? Shut up about voter ID. Right? That's your logic. Your logic is if it's rare, we shouldn't be talking about it. So shut up about voter ID. Oh, you're not going to do that, right? You're probably going to insist that we have voter IDs, even though the amount of fraud that might be done in an election that a voter ID would prevent is infinitesimal. You're still going to bitch and whine and moan about it, but yet I'm not allowed to talk about somebody saving their own lives. If the law didn't allow Kate Cox to save her own life, the law is wrong, the law is immoral, the law should be taken away and replaced with something that's better. Now, in my opinion of what better might be is probably much different than somebody else. But if you think the law is no problem because the amount of Kate Coxes that would take place are small, then you're not pro-life. You're pro-death. You're supporting people die because they're in a minority. Laws should be written well. This is the year 2024. Laws should be written well enough to handle every case. But I'm of the opinion that the people in Texas don't view the prohibition of Kate Cox getting abortion as a bug. They probably consider it a feature. So, voter ID is important. It's not. Because the amount of fraud that's committed with voter IDs is inconsequential. There's no election that would be changed if only you had voter ID. None. Now, I'm fine with implementing a blanket standalone bill that says everybody gets a free voter ID who on their 18th birthday if you're a citizen. It's issued to you. Here you go. This is your voter ID. If you need a new one because you lost it, fine. Here's your new one. Everybody gets a voter ID. Done. But most conservatives that I talk to will reject that for various reasons. Because it's not about the voter ID. It's about voter disenfranchisement. It's never been about the election integrity. It's about keeping the electorate as white and as old as possible. That's why these people don't want college students voting in their colleges, even in the town where they go to college, even though the Supreme Court has absolutely said college students can absolutely vote in the town they go to college in. That's their right to do so. Republicans want to disenfranchise voters. That's it. It's not about it's not about protecting election integrity. If it was about election integrity, you would be critical of Donald Trump for begging Rathensperger in Georgia, please find me 11,000 votes. Find me magically these 11,000 votes so that I can win this state. That's not election integrity. That's election fraud. That's him begging for the Secretary of State of Georgia to commit an act of election fraud to hand him an election that he didn't win. But you're not going to criticize Trump for trying to manipulate an election. You're not going to do it. Why? Because hypocrisy is a conservative prerequisite. As is said by the host of the most with the smooth sounds of the Percy podcast, Nimbus Yosh. See, Chris, had I not been able to get a D&E for a miscarriage 20 years ago, I would be dead and never had a third child after that, not to mention leaving 2 young kids motherless, pro-life my ass. Exactly, Chris. Taken out of context, he was trying to steal the Georgia election because he lost it. And even if he would have convinced Rathensperger to flip Georgia back to him, he still wouldn't have had electoral votes to win. But let's now go back to the Trump master plan. Now that we're here, now that we have the discussion of the Trump, we were going to be discussing the Trump master plan, and even though Big Hook kind of ruined it a little bit because he buried the lead there, I guess, so to speak. Yeah. So, but it's fine. It's fine. We're all fine. How are you? Oh, wait. That's not what I wanted to check first before I did this. I think we're maybe good. Maybe. Let me see if I can delete some other files before I start recording this sort of topic of conversation, because the topic of conversation might go a little long. Doop-doo. Let's just do a bunch of scrolling. Let's get rid of those 2 at least. Anyway. Let me delete the recycle bin as well, because I didn't do a shift delete, because I'm stupid. They're so tired of hearing about the stolen. I'm tired of hearing about the stolen election too. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of them saying it. I'm sick of them talking about it. I'm sick of them crying about it because they didn't lose an election. But in reality, they're trying to steal this election because every Republican accusation is a confession. So let's talk about the ways that Donald Trump is trying to steal this election. Shall we? Let's talk about it. Let's have this discussion. So, how does Donald Trump want to steal the election? Let me count the ways. Well, we know that the Republicans have enabled, like in Iowa and Georgia and other states, the ability of people to challenge voter registration. And you know it's going to be conservatives challenging liberals and their ability to vote. So that now liberals have registered Democrats or whatever have to now jump through hoops to be able to prove that they have the right to vote, even though they've already proven that they had the right to vote because they got registered. Right? And then you also have voter purges. The Secretary of State's love voter purges. We talked about the 2020 voter purge by Katherine Harris. Hell, even in, I think 2016 and you had the voter purges that Kemp did. He just he did voter purging as the Secretary of State. You also have, had voter registrations that just sat on the desk and didn't get processed. Another way that Republicans trying to steal these elections. There's also the ways that the Republicans steal elections, or try to steal elections by just misinformation, lies, deception, trying to claim that things are fraud when they're not. Trying to say that Vice President Harris's picture in an airport was AI, even though it wasn't AI, and therefore it's fraud. Like, making crap up, just to spread information, just to try and make people not vote in a certain way. But here's the other thing that they want to do, which Big Hood talked about, is they want the people who certify the elections to not certify the elections. Doesn't matter what state they're in. They want to prevent them from certifying the election. Now, why is this? You might say, well, Dan, wouldn't Donald Trump want to win? If Donald Trump would want to win, then wouldn't he want to win the election in the states? Why would he want people, especially in swing states, to not certify these elections? Well, the answer is simple. And this is what makes this plan potentially so sinister. Is that if Donald Trump can prevent the certification in enough states so that nobody hits 270 electoral colleges. So let's say he can stop enough states worth of electoral college votes from actually certifying their election, be it via these people in Georgia that he was praising the other day, via stopping it via lawsuits, what have you. If he can stop those certifications from happening all the way up to what he was trying to do on January 6th and back in 2020, if he could try and do that again as well, if he's able to do that and prevent the electoral college votes from being certified from certain states, and nobody gets 270, the election goes to the House. The House of Representatives then picks who the next president is. And it's not a one person per vote. So it's not a, California gets a bunch more votes than Wyoming. No, it's done like the Senate, which is bizarre. The House is supposed to be the people's house, but in an election where nobody gets 270 electoral votes, let's say there's a tie at 269 and 269, or let's say that Donald Trump is able to prevent certification via legal or illegal shenanigans and prevent these electoral college votes from being certified, and therefore they have no electoral votes from those states, then it goes to the House of Representatives, and each congressional delegation from each state gets the vote, and there are more red states than blue states because, in this circumstance, Wyoming counts just as much as California. And then you have enough red states to win. Donald Trump wins the election, and he steals the election by preventing electoral college votes from being certified. Now, I'll caveat that with this. There's never currently been a situation where you've had people who've been able to successfully block electoral college votes from being certified, or even really any real elections from being certified in any sort of shape or imagination to the scale that would be needed for him to be able to get this done. So then we'll just add that caveat in there. But there's also never been a situation before this year where the Supreme Court has said that a president has total immunity. We're in unprecedented times. And those unprecedented times, you have to consider every single possibility that's out there. And when you're looking and questioning as to why Donald Trump might not want Georgia and Arizona and Nevada, or New Mexico, might want to prevent these states from being counted altogether, it's not simply because he doesn't think he won those races. It's because he doesn't care, because conservatives know that if the election goes to the House, they win the presidency by default. And if that's the way you have to win, that's pretty damn pathetic. But it just shows to show why we need to get out there. We need to vote. We need to vote. Make sure that we have not been disenfranchised and make sure we still have the ability to vote. And we need to get out there, get our friends voting, get our family voting, make sure everybody gets there and do such a big blue wave. And not even a blue wave, because we need Republicans and independents to come along with it as well. Because this is about the sake of our country. Our country is at stake here. They want to perform the ultimate coup. They tried to do it on January 6, 2020, and they failed. They're going to try and do it again, and this is one of the ways I think they're going to try and do it. And I was right back in 2016 on a lot of these issues. I don't want to be right about this one. I want to be wrong. I want to be able to come after this election in 2024. In 2025 in late January, I'm going to be able to say, you know what? I was wrong. That Donald Trump either didn't try and do this, or Donald Trump tried to do it and he failed. But it's too risky to just leave that up to chance. We have to look at all possible ways that Donald Trump is going to steal this election and stop them. Agree, disagree, leave your comments below. Remember to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and have a good day. So that was my video. Jeff Curry, I'm seeing a neurosurgeon in the morning, but not about your knee. Even though I understand that nerves and neurosurgeons, nerves all over the body, just when you think neurosurgeon, you think brain. So it's like, of course you're not going to go see a neurosurgeon about your knee, but you know, it is what it is. So we used to walk in, state our name and address, and get checked off. No one ever had to vote for somebody else in the entire precinct. Adlo, you're a liar and a fool for believing lies. Oh, I mean, clearly. Oh, Adlo said the other thing I wanted to talk about. Yay, we're going to get to that too. Adlo. Adlo said she's not a natural-born citizen, which I believe you're talking about Vice President Harris not being a natural-born citizen. This is the other lie. This is the other lie that the Republicans and conservatives have now embraced. Let's bring that up. Let's bring the document up, shall we? So let's maximize that window, and we're gonna go to the alternate screen because we can. Hey, Rosie Posey, you're back again. In the chat, one of our conservative listeners, watchers, has said that Kamala Harris is not a natural-born citizen. Why would he say that? What's that? What's this about? Of course she's a natural-born citizen, right? Well, under the principles, platform, and policies of the National Federation of Republican Assemblies, or NFRA, there is a statement of principles. We believe all men are created in the image of God and that they are endowed with him by unique gifts, blah, 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 blah. We believe that to secure and protect these blessings, civil government is instituted among men, blah, 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 blah. You know, they go on, and then we go ahead and we search for Harris. Let's go ahead and do a search. Hello, Rose. My cat is being very helpful. A resolution calling for adherence to the U.S. Constitution for eligibility to become president of the United States. So this is what the NFRA is trying to have a resolution. They've resolved this. They're pushing for states to support this as well. Whereas, this is their words now, whereas the constitutional qualifications of presidential eligibility is written in Article 2, Section 1, Paragraph 5, states no person except a natural-born citizen shall be eligible, or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to be office of the president. Whereas an originalist and strict constructionist understanding of the Constitution in the Scalia and Thomas tradition, which would automatically raise an eyebrow, especially Thomas, as well as precedent-setting Supreme Court cases below, have found that a natural-born citizen is defined as a person born on American soil of parents. Now, that's one of the ways that you can be a natural-born citizen, but they cite Dred Scott. Dred Scott isn't constitutional precedent anymore. Why? because of the 13th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution. The 14th Amendment specifically states that if you're born on U.S. soil, you are a U.S. citizen, i.e. at birth, i.e. a natural-born citizen. There's either natural-born citizens or naturalized citizens. If you're born on U.S. soil, you're a natural-born citizen. But they go on. Several states, candidates, and major political parties have ignored this fundamental presidential qualification, including candidates like Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Kamala Harris, whose parents were not American citizens at the time of their birth. It doesn't matter, you bunch of nincompoops. Why? Because the 14th Amendment says they're citizens because they're born here. And there are other things that in law that determine that, hey, if you're a citizen at birth, therefore you're a natural-born citizen. Because natural-born citizen, all that means is citizen at birth, i.e. not naturalized. But I'm still shook that they used Dred. Why would you use Dred Scott? One of the most terrible rulings in the history of our country that was not written by Justice Alito. Why would you use Dred Scott? It's bizarre. But again, it's the National Federation of Republican Assemblies, so therefore, of course it's going to be bizarre. It's from them. But the fact that they mention originalism is also bizarre. How can you be an originalist? Originalist would only believe in the Constitution with up to the 10th Amendment. You can't be an originalist and ignore, while ignoring you have to not be an originalist because we have Amendments 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, I mean, Prohibition was overturned, so you can't necessarily have the Prohibition one. But yeah, you have amendments to the Constitution that have expanded what things mean, including natural-born citizen. Thank you, 14th Amendment. But these people are going to try and, well, we're originalists. Well, screw your originalism. The Constitution has changed since then, including the 14th Amendment. Bunch of wackaloons. But there are people who are now going to be jumping all over this and say, well, Kamala Harris isn't a natural-born citizen, like Adlo did in the chat. Why? Because they can't win with facts. They can't win on the issues, so they have to win using things like xenophobia, racism, and bigotry. Because that's all that is. Because notice they didn't mention Ted Cruz. Notice they didn't mention people. They're not going to mention anybody else. But they mention Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Kamala Harris. Of course, they'll pronounce her name wrong because, again, bigots. But there you go. These people cannot win on an argument of fact, so therefore they have to use bigotry and xenophobia and racism to try and fool as many people as possible that things are true that are not. Vice President Harris is a natural-born citizen. There's no question about that fact, and anybody trying to claim otherwise is lying to you, and you should laugh in their face. And when they tell you that, just flat out tell them the National Federation of Republican Assemblies is wrong. They cited Dred Scott like a bunch of morons, and the 13th and 14th Amendment says otherwise. So F you. Done. So there's that. Thank you, Adlo, for saying your horrible thing, because it allowed me to pivot into my final topic for which I wanted to speak about today. Wait, who left who for Shakira? What? Jeff says Shakira has been calling you? Has she been calling you wherever, whenever? Speaking of that, Jeff, speaking of hips don't lie, one of my favorite Twitter interactions took place a long time ago, and I had this epiphany one day. I was like, you know what? If Shakira, whose hips don't lie, and if Sir Mix-a-Lot, who likes big butts and cannot lie had kids, would they be the most honest children on the planet? And Sir Mix-a-Lot responded to me saying, let's make that happen. And I was very excited because I love Baby Got Back. My anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hon. And I was just pumped that Sir Mix-a-Lot responded to my tweet. And then I was like, my response was like, I think Shakira needs to get the back of Sir Mix-a-Lot's Mercedes so that we can prove this for science. Science demands that we know. And Sir Mix-a-Lot's like, I'd wet myself. But no, that was one of my best Twitter interactions ever, to have Sir Mix-a-Lot respond to a tweet of mine. I was very happy. It was I think it was well before Liberal Dan Radio, so it wasn't my didn't make Liberal Dan Radio go viral, unfortunately. Yeah, John Duff, never thought we'd be discussing Shakira. Sorry. No, but that's what we do at the end of the show. At the end of the show, sometimes we trail off into topics of silliness and whatever. So, Kimchi, I'm a widowed cougar. I married a cougar. I mean, it's only 4 months difference, but her mascot when she was in high school was the Cougars, so we always joke about that, but she's also a cougar, especially because she'll be like, oh, I like that actor. How old? Oh, yeah, 10 years younger than you? Yeah, more than 10 years younger than you? You're definitely a cougar at this point if you're being thirsty over the actors that are 10 months over. Whatever. Wait, what am I missing? Ichabod Deer said, happily voting for Harris Walls. Same. Although I live in Louisiana, so my vote won't matter, most likely. Kevin Anderson, you still have me, Jackie. Wait, who's married but separated? Fainting couch wears plaid, and I love her. David, are you really JD Vance? If you love a couch. Jeff, you dated a 37-year-old woman when you were 21. When I was 21, I hooked up with like a 48-year-old woman. So there you go. I got you beat. Jeff, I'm going to vote early like 2020. Absolutely. I always vote. One of the things that it's crazy, like the morning show host that I listen to sometimes who's a conservative, he is so like, I don't like early voting. We used to vote on election day. We used to have election day. Now we have election time. Why don't we have election day again? Well, because a lot more people are voting there, Jeff. Appeals to tradition are logical fallacies. Shut up. David, should have avoided music. Now I'm just going to keep going. Just because. Sorry. Yeah, boy toys. LOL. Blah, 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 blah. Mail-in ballots all the way. I mean, there are states that are per 100% mail-in, and they have no issues, no fraud, no nothing. And conservatives are like, the hypocrisy. I remember when we what was it? I don't think it was Ida. I think it was the next year. I think it was 2022, and we ended up going to Disney World. We were going to Florida. We were going to go to the beach, but the place we were going to stay at the beach was kind of messed up, so I had to get an Airbnb a little bit lower. That's where I got to meet Ken Otto. May his memory be a blessing. And he, I saw these signs in Florida reminding everybody to mail in their ballots. And I was like, well, wait, I thought Republicans didn't like mail-in ballots, but now you're going to use it in your state? F you, hypocrite. Hypocrisy is a conservative prerequisite. Anyway. It is 10:08 here. I have stuff to do afterwards. I think that this is since we've covered everything that we want to do, and I do want to upload those 2 videos that I've recorded to YouTube so that they'll go live in the morning, so that you can share those individual videos, comment on those, spread them long and wide or whatever, just to help the show grow. I would appreciate it. But they should be available. They'll probably be available soon for people who are liberal Danimals. But as soon as they get uploaded, I'll make them available for liberal Danimals. But they won't be available for everybody else until the morning, because I like it to go live when more people are awake. So therefore, there's more of a chance that people might see it. I think that's the running theory about how it works. I don't know. I could be wrong. It's happened once or twice before. So, yes, thank you. Like, subscribe, and share. Again, Liberal Dan Radio on Facebook, on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, all over the place. Liberal Dan Radio. I'm also Liberal Dan on Facebook as well. I have some content on there as well. So, thank you, everybody, for hanging with me and supporting it and for fighting a good fight. We'll be back. We're going to be back sometime. I don't have a game yet to do. I tried to get one of those sponsorship games, and I thought it would be fun to have like a trivia game, that maybe we could all do trivia together as part of a group, and that would be kind of more fun. But apparently the trivia game is not allowed, is not legal in Louisiana, so I can't play it. So on that. Anyway, I'll be back unless something big happens. I will be back Monday, 8 p.m. Central, here, liberaldanradio.com, or twitch.tv/liberaldanradio at 8 p.m. Central for more talk from the left. That's right.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.